soccer and volleyball games. Plus, you have the ability to add on tickets for conference football games and premier basketball and baseball games for an additional cost. To learn more and sign up today, visit thegamecockclub.com/go.
Hardee's is adding the goodness of maple flavor to our menu with new maple biscuits drizzled in sweet icing or stacked with savory sausage. Plus, our new cherrywood smoked maple candied bacon is perfect on a breakfast biscuit, Frisco burger, or its own. For a sweet spot in your day, maple makes everything better at Hardee's. And now enjoy breakfast till noon every day. Available for a limited time at participating locations. Breakfast hours vary by location.
What you're talking about. Sponsored by Love Chevrolet. Drive into 25 in the Chevy of your dreams. I-26 in Harbison and Love.
All right, let's take one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Thursday morning. And I got to say, despite the conditions, everything looks pretty good on the roadways as of right now. Not getting any reports of any major ice on the roadways either, which is certainly a good thing as the snow continues to melt. Actually, correction, do have a little bit of ice, Corley Mill Road and North Lake Drive out in Lexington, so be careful if you're making your way through there. But for the most part in the city, everything does look okay. Taking a look at the weather. Hey, guess what? It's cold. 24 degrees. High today is going to get up to 42. A little bit warmer tomorrow, 46, and then Saturday, 48, 54 on Sunday. It's traffic and weather on the early game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri. I want to see how long we can go without talking about it. I know we're not going to be able to go very far. But, man, Jack, what a brutal night at Colonial Life Arena.
That was rough, to say the least. And it's like, I don't know. It's I'd like to say it's bad luck that South Carolina just continues to suffer these gut-wrenching losses in SEC play. But at the same time, these things are happening as a byproduct of what's happening on the court.
Bad luck is when something happens that you maybe can't explain, right? Like, oh, man, I don't know how things went wrong. I don't know how things fell apart. Oh, we know how things fell apart. We know what's wrong with this team. We'll get into it plenty specifically here in a moment as it reared its ugly head once again. But just in terms of all the losses you've had so far, this one probably hurt the worst because you led for 38 and a half minutes of this game. Florida did not take the lead until those final 5 seconds. But, hey, that's all that counts at the end of the day. As long as you have the lead when the clock's hit 0, you win the game, and that's what Florida did.
It's astonishing. This team is 0-6 in conference play. They should easily be 3-3 right now. But, again, even when they play a good game, they kill themselves and they shoot themselves in the foot with these mistakes that just you can't explain. And it's just like you snap your fingers and it's there. And it's like, oh, they lost. It's crazy.
We'll unpack this, have a little therapy session here as we digest another loss in conference play for Lamont Paris' crew. Of course, though, it is 9 a.m., and that means got to kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick Me Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9. Sandstorm was bumping all night over at Colonial Life Arena. Good crowd, tons of students there. It looked like the student section was overflowing. Everybody wore black. The blackout was in effect. Like, you had everything you could want and more from a crowd and environment standpoint for an 0-5 team, right? Like, I was legitimately worried going into this game, like, okay, what's the apathy going to be? Is it going to be a half-full arena, or is the crowd going to be, apathetic throughout the entire game? Like, no, they were engaged. They were ready. It even got to the point, and this is maybe on me for thinking this way, with a couple minutes to go, I'm like, oh, we might see a court storming tonight. Silly me, because there was still plenty of time left in the game as it fell apart. But, Jack, before we get into the specifics of what went wrong, set the scene for us of how you took in and what the environment was like there at Colonial Life.
It was a good crowd. I can't lie. Now, let's provide a disclaimer real quick. Number one, the student section, like you said, was just jam-packed. I mean, it's easy to show up when there's a free giveaway and there's really nothing else going on during the snowstorm here in Columbia. It's not really much of a storm at this point. And then obviously a lot of regular fans. It was pretty empty at the start. And I think it's just due to the traveling on the roads and stuff. I think it's also just because, do people really want to go watch an 0-5 basketball team? I've heard so many people tell, that they're checked out and they don't care anymore and stuff. So, I guess it's just a byproduct of that. But then it started filling in as the game kind of wore along. And by the end of the game, look, it was a very respectable enough crowd, I think. Mostly made up of students, though. And, it helps when South Carolina has that kind of support, just like the women do, which they have no problem filling out, games because obviously they win.
And the way this game started was great. I mean, they came out of the jump firing on all cylinders. Colin Murray-Boyles gets those couple quick baskets, and he's got 5 points before you even sit down and, get in your seat. Florida gets a travel there early, and South Carolina is cooking right out of the gate, and they just played with a good ferocity and energy that we had seen at times this year, but maybe not consistently enough. And you're like, man, you keep this up 40 minutes, you're going to win this game. And again, they controlled the ebb and flow of this game throughout the entire first half and most of the second half, but it just seems like there's always that one point in the game where things just go off the rails, and that happened once again.
Yep, and that moment in the game came in the second half when Florida started running the press defense, and that was probably about midway through the second half. And look, keep in mind, South Carolina only had 3 turnovers in the first half. That was an outstanding number.
But by the way, it took them 11 minutes before they committed a turnover.
Yeah.
Like, with how bad they've been with this, that was a minor miracle.
Because normally by halftime, it's like, oh my gosh, like against Vanderbilt, they were already up to 16 turnovers, and that was a season high for them. But give them a lot of credit. They took care of the basketball and did what they had to do. Now, the second half was just a complete train wreck from that standpoint, because in the final, I think, 9 minutes of the game, you had 9 turnovers, ending up with 12 in the second half. And that is just... It's just unexplainable just how they just happen so often in bunches like that.
Here's your moment, right? We talked about the Oklahoma game and those final 12 minutes after you were tied up at 47 and losing down the stretch 35-15. With 8:49 to go in the game last night, Carolina led by 13, 58-45. That was their second biggest lead of the game. They had a 14-point lead with about 12 minutes to go, but got back out to a 13-point lead. You were outscored 25-11 down the stretch. And as you said, in those final 9 minutes, you had 9 turnovers, 5 of them by Zach Davis.
That's South Carolina basketball this year. Quite literally in a nutshell. This is a team that we saw it against Oklahoma where they got outscored 35-15. This is a team that just, for whatever reason, they just can't seem to close out. And I think it's more so for these 2 reasons. Number one, the turnovers are through the roof. They couldn't inbound a single pass last night, and it was just anytime Florida ran that press right in the corner on the inbound, on the baseline. It was like South Carolina just like coughed the ball. It's like here you go, take the ball from me and run and go score an easy bucket. That is how Florida was able to get back into this game last night, because as soon as they ran that, South Carolina wasn't prepared for it.
Well, and we knew going into the game, one of the keys we talked about yesterday, Florida was so good in transition. And the second they took the ball away, you blinked and boom, they were at the rim, making pretty much all of them. Points off turnovers last night, and Florida only turned the ball over 9 times, 22-5. There's your game. Even if you cut that in half, if you have 5 less turnovers and they're getting 7 or 8 less points, you still win this game. Mm-hmm. Despite that, you would still win this game. Again, it's becoming this is what this team is now. Again, if you have one bad turnover game, that's one thing, but you were consistently turning the ball over at a high clip. And again, it took them a while, but eventually it reared its ugly head. And like you said, when Florida was playing that press, it just looked like South Carolina forgot how to handle a basketball in general. Again, they couldn't get an inbound pass to save their life, it seemed like.
Nope. And the other thing that's probably going to go under the rug here is, in addition to all that, as if that wasn't enough to lose this game, they also went 4 for 8 at the free throw line. Free throws have been such a killer of this team. It cost them the game against Auburn, in my opinion. And it's like you just can't be missing these timely free throws. Like Zach Davis, for as well as he played, he still had those turnovers, and he missed some clutch free throws down the stretch. Same with CMB.
Game is tied at 68.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Davis goes to the line with, I don't even know how many seconds left it was, but it wasn't but a couple. Goes 1 for 2. You're up 69-68. Now Florida, all they got to do is go down to the other end of the court and do the thing that they are just about as better at than anybody in the country, and that's make a 2-pointer. That's exactly what they did. They get the layup, 70 seconds left, or 70 to 69, and you did have time, 5 seconds to go the length of the floor. Shot choice probably not the best there.
I don't know why you didn't call a time. I don't know why you didn't call a timeout there. As soon as you get to midcourt, call a timeout. You had a few seconds left. Call a timeout. Get a play set up. I really could care less if Florida is able to reset and figure out what they want to do on defense. I feel so much better doing something, setting up a correct play, than just hurling up a 3 and hoping it goes in. And I think it was a good shot. Like Jacoby had the opportunity there, it just didn't go in. But I don't know. I mean, like LP is going to take some heat for that one, I think. And here's the thing: I think he's a good coach. I think he's a great coach. Honestly, it's just if things are just not clicking for South Carolina this year. It's simple as that.
And we'll get into some of Coach Paris's thoughts after the game, because you can hear the frustration in his voice when he's talking about what happened last night, which we'll get to coming up here in a minute. The question becomes to me, okay, Coach Paris is not the one out there in shorts and sneakers on the court.
Nope.
So he can only do so much. He's got to get the guys prepared to go out there and be successful. And if you don't have the right talent on the court to be successful, then you can only go so far. But at the same time, as a head coach, you are supposed to be able to take the talent that you have, which, again, there's plenty of high-level talent on this team, and get them to the point where they can close the deal and win these games, and they're not doing it. So I don't know exactly what that power balance shift is, if it's more on the players or more on the coaches, but something's not going right. The connection's not getting there somewhere, and it's resulting in losses.
Yeah, it's a mixture of both, I think. I think it's a combination of what they do in practice. It's just because we continuously hear during these media availabilities that, this is something we got to work on in practice a little bit more, and then all that. And it's like, I mean, don't you guys already work on it? Wouldn't you already be working on it enough? And then it's just like something's just not translating to the game. So, it's just tough to win games when you are committing this many turnovers and missing your opportunities.
So Zach Davis last night, for a large portion of that game, looked like he was going to be the hero, right? I mean, he's nailing shots. He made three
half
3-pointers, went 9 of 18 from the field. Dude's on fire, dishing some assists, and every time he's making a basket, the crowd's getting louder and louder for him. And you're thinking, man, this guy's going to be the MVP of the game, and here's who we're going to be talking about so positively coming up tomorrow when reviewing this game. But again, 6 turnovers, 5 of them in those final 9 minutes. And again, he just looked like, every time they put the camera on him, like a deer in the headlights, like he didn't know what was going on. The moment just became too big for him all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's he's been here for 3 years now, and again, we're what? How many games into this season now? It's like 19 games.
Yeah,
like
19 games. By the way, you're 1 game away from being 500 after being 10 and 3.
Oh my gosh, it's like, the excuses of all this stuff can only go on for so long. It's just, you are what you are at this point, and it's it's hard to win again when you're doing the things that you're doing. And look, for as well as Zach played last night, the 6 turnovers, the key missed free throws, that's how this night is going to unfortunately be remembered for the Gamecocks in a game that, again, coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah, again, more to unpack from this. We get Coach Paris' thoughts coming up next, but I keep going back to the word brutal. Just a brutal way to lose to yet another top 5 team in your house that you had on the ropes.
You should have 2 top 5 wins right now, and you should be feeling so good about where you're at, but instead, we're talking about an 0-6 basketball team in SEC play.
More to unpack from this coming up next. If you want to share a thought, 803-404-6100. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Thursday here on The Game. Tyler Head here once again telling you about our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. I tell you about it all the time, but I'll remind you once more, starting to notice some weird things around your home that could be signs of serious foundation problems, things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors or windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you see any of these problems with your home, do not hesitate, because again, foundation problems are a serious concern for any home, especially if they're happening with yours. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com, and they will send a professional out to your home to evaluate what's going on around your home with your foundation and get it fixed right so you and your family can live comfortably going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist.
for Zach to try and give the Gamecocks the 1-point lead. He does. 69-68. Here come the Gators. 15 seconds left. Who wins it? Clayton on the switch. Pringle takes it. Gives off to Richard. Richard drives to the basket. Gets to the rim. Puts it up and in. 5 seconds left. Gives to Jacoby Wright on the inbounds. Jacoby pulls the string from 30 off the iron. No good. And the Gators steal one from South Carolina.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Thursday. That was the call last night on the Gamecock Radio Network. Derek Scott. The waning seconds there as Florida pulls off the 70-69 win over South Carolina, holding South Carolina once again to now 0-6 in SEC play. By the way, the last team without a win in conference play after Arkansas is able to beat Georgia also at the last second last night. Tons of last-second games across the SEC. So Carolina sitting by themselves at the bottom of the SEC as of right now. And we kind of touched on this a moment ago. Jacoby Wright's decision to pull up from so far back. You had 5 seconds. You could have gotten a lot. And again, you were down by 1 point. You could have either gone for 2 or try and draw on a foul and get into the line, but you didn't need to pull up from that far out. You didn't need the miracle hero shot from 30 feet, like you said.
The options are, in this case, there are only 2 options, and if you're saying shoot a 3-point shot, incorrect. The only right answers in this case are A, drive as hard as you can to the basket, go aggressive. Literally, that's something I know we'll talk about Lamont in a second. Something he literally had to bring up last night. And try to draw a foul, right? You go to the line. Jacoby's a good free throw shooter, so put him at the line. You got a chance to win the game pretty easily right there. Or just go up for a layup or a mid-range shot. You should be going towards the basket without question, though, in that situation. Or just call a timeout, and try to draw up the correct play. But with the momentum of going down the floor, I don't understand why you stopped at 3-point range when all you needed, like you said, was you're only down by 1. You just needed 2.
Yeah, again, the fundamentals just seem to go out the window for this team in those last couple of minutes there. And again, now you're sitting at 0-6 in conference play. Here's Coach Paris after the game, and here's an interesting distinction here because some of these cuts that we have are him talking to Derek and Judge Manning right after the game on the radio, and some of them are in his press conference a little bit later on in the evening. But this one right here, the first one, is him in the radio interview after the game, fresh off the court. Just listen to the way that he's talking compared to how you normally hear Lamont Paris talk about the fact that this was the game that they should have won but didn't.
No, it's not easy at all. You've had your struggles. You've played well enough in a lot of games, if you look at it, honestly. And then here's another one where you played even better. You played even better. You did the game. The overall body of work in the game was such that we should have won the game. Period. That's it. Except for you didn't. We didn't take it. It was there for the taking. We had to do some basic things that I think would have allowed us to win. Dribble real hard in one direction, cross half-court, jump stop, pivot a whole bunch. If 2 guys are on your call timeout, find it to an open guy. There were some basic things like, they're not known for pressing like that. They had to. It was their only way. It's the only way that they were going to do it, and the only way it was going to work is if we coughed it up, and we did cough it up. And we coughed it up right in live turnovers, right into transition, and even when we get into half-court, we made some turnovers as we got frazzled. It just was, that was a tough one. It's a tough one. It's hard. Guys got to be confident again as they move forward, but what does that really look like if you're in that situation and you don't bring it to the finish line to have true confidence?
That is a frustrated man. His mouth is not keeping up with how fast his brain is trying to get out everything that he wants to say. And again, Coach Paris is usually very calculated and, again, slow in the way that he explains things while thoroughly thinking things out. He couldn't speak fast enough to convey how frustrated he was after that game last night.
No, it's easy to be frustrated with the way last night went, but just in general, this is happening over and over again where South Carolina finds new ways to lose games. Like last night, it's actually a recipe of multiple things. It's the trap defense or the press defense that affected South Carolina and forced a ton of turnovers. The Vanderbilt loss, it's the consistent amount of turnovers that just were going on throughout that game. And then the Auburn game, it's the inability to score in the final 5 minutes and missing key free throws. So these close losses have just been it's just something new every game. And then all the other 3 losses have just been absolute blowouts. So no in between with this team. And South Carolina is, look, it doesn't get easier from here. You are continuing to play top 25 opponents every week, and you're playing another aggressive team on Saturday with Mississippi State, who, by the way, beat you by 35 to open up this whole losing streak.
Yeah, it doesn't get any easier. And Michael weighs in on our live stream. By the way, appreciate everyone checking us out on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. He says turnovers and giving up layups, it's like they gave up. And again, I've kind of brought this up over the past couple games, but I think it's a really important point to talk about now. And Coach Paris did talk about it last night after the game as well. Like, where's this team's head at? Like, again, you've come so close, and you have just peed down your leg constantly in some of these tight games. Like, at what point do you just say, you know what, this season's over. I'm just going to go through the motions, get it over with, but we're not playing for anything anymore. Because, again, when you're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds, that's a real thing where they can give up.
Yeah, and LP made a good point last night of, like, guys are probably going to look back on these losses, and they're going to think about the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, and if they made this play, then they could have won the game. And that takes a toll, I think, mentally on you. Because, look, I mean, you can't worry about the past. You can look back on the past and try to fix your mistakes, but you can't let it dictate, what you're going to do in the future here. And for South Carolina, I think they're going to do a good job of bouncing back and recovering from this game. I mean, they've done it, 5 times now to where they've played better basketball in certain points in these games. It's just, again, when it really matters most, you could play well for 39 minutes, as we've learned, and you could still lose this game. It's just you got to be able to make the plays that matter the most. That's how you're going to win basketball games.
Yeah, and look, like I said, Mississippi State, another good team coming to town this weekend. And, again, you lost in their barn by 35 points to open up conference play. But given the trend here, I fully expect on Saturday, Carolina's going to show a lot of good things. They're going to have this game close in the second half. And the fundamentals of either turnovers, free throws, or the combination of the two are going to end up costing them again. Because, again, it just becomes a repetitive thing. That's what the identity of this team is until we see otherwise. That's what I'm just going to think every game is going to end up being.
Yeah, no. And, look, I don't know if this game's going to be close on Saturday. I expect South Carolina to fight hard. I mean, look, that should be the case. That first half out in Starkville was easily one of the worst halves of basketball I've seen from this team all year, if not the worst. But give them credit since then. I think they've played much better basketball. And look, they are, again, I don't think the record says they're 0-6 in conference play, but let's be quite honest. This team is a much better product than what the record is indicating.
Like I said, they are for all intents and purposes, about a 500 conference team that just has not been able to win any of those games. Because, again, you had the Auburn game. You had now the Florida game. You had, the Vanderbilt game, even though you turned the ball over 25 times. Like, again, if you get some of these basic fundamental things right, you probably win half your conference games up to this point. And then we're saying, all right, you still got a shot at maybe being a fringe tournament team or something along those lines. But now, again, I don't know what you're really playing for in these final 12 games.
Just pride, I guess. I mean, look, the tournament conversations are just about over. I mean, look, unless they just go on some miracle run here, I just don't see it. You gotta get a win out of the way. That's number one. But you've haven't been able to do that now for quite some time here. It's just I don't know. I don't know what the motivation's going to look like. But again, they've proven us wrong and played pretty good basketball when no one expects them to. So we'll see what happens when another top 15 team comes into town.
Well, Lamont Paris will be on Carolina Calls tonight at 6 o'clock as he can vent more of his frustrations and look ahead to trying to avoid going 0-7 against Mississippi State this upcoming Saturday. And we'll talk a little bit more about that game coming up tomorrow. By the way, you can listen to Carolina Calls right here on the game. We'll switch gears to football coming up next. A lot of controversy coming away from the divisional weekend involving officials and Patrick Mahomes. Well, Patrick Mahomes, in a press conference yesterday, weighed in on just that. We'll get to his thoughts coming up next. It is the Extra Point, Tyler Head and Jack Beltry, along with you on your Thursday morning here on the game.
I just try to play football at the end of the day. The referees are doing their best to call the game as fair and as proper as they possibly can. And all you can do is go out there and play the game that you love as hard as you can and live with the results. And so for me, it's to go out there, play hard, try to do whatever I can to win the football game, and then live with the results based off my effort and the way that we played the game. And so I think that's what we preach here in Kansas City. I haven't felt any different. You get new referees every year. You get new circumstances, and you never can really tell because every play is different. That's what makes the NFL so special. And so I feel like I've just continued to play the game, and I just try to win.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you on your Thursday here in the game. That, of course, is the voice of Patrick Mahomes talking yesterday to the media in reference to the controversy coming out of the divisional game against the Texans, where some calls people feel like went in the favor of Patrick Mahomes that maybe wouldn't have gone in the favor of some other quarterbacks around the NFL. And here's my thing. If you're a Kansas City media member and you ask Patrick Mahomes, hey, do you think you're getting preferential treatment from the officials? What do you think he's going to say?
Well, he's not going to give you the answer you're looking for. Look, the fact of the matter is there's no way really to sugarcoat it. The Chiefs seem to benefit from calls. We've seen it. There was a call on Saturday that I remember where I think it was like one of those hit to the helmet calls that they make or whatever, where the Texans defender supposedly hit Mahomes's crown of the helmet or whatever. Instead, it was two Texans players colliding together right over top of Mahomes, and it just so happened a flag was thrown, and it went against the Texans. It's just stuff like that. It's like, I don't know. It makes you wonder what's really going on.
I get what you're saying, but is it just the fact that it's more highlighted because it's the Chiefs?
Yes, obviously it's more highlighted because it's the Chiefs.
Because if you watch enough NFL football, whether it's your team or just random games across the league, you see bad and questionable officiating in every single game, right? Like the officiating across the league is extremely poor. But especially on a stage like the playoffs, when you have a call like what went against the Texans for Patrick Mahomes in those two instances, the two guys converging on the tackle that he slid on, and then Will Anderson hitting him high earlier on in the game, I think it just becomes more of a talking point because it is the Chiefs, it is Patrick Mahomes, it is the standard of the NFL for the past couple of years. Same thing when things were happening with the Patriots and Tom Brady. That anytime a call went in favor of them, it was kind of immediately the narrative of, the league must be trying their hardest to make sure that the Patriots are winning. Yeah,
it's just, I don't know. I mean, look, there's someone's got to be pinned as the villain in the NFL, and it's obviously the Chiefs because they continuously win. And again, it's literally just like those Brady Patriots teams of, despite how good they are, they're painted as the villain.
So Nick Wright of Fox Sports yesterday actually talked about this. Now, again, he is from Kansas City. He is a self-confessed Chiefs fan. So is there a little bit of bias in this answer? Yes. But I think he also brings up a bit of an interesting point. Here's what Nick Wright had to say yesterday.
Nobody cares because nobody actually cares about bad officiating. They only care about trying to find a reason that the league, by the way, and I'm sorry I'm late, but you put me on this. This idea that it's rigged. Guys, you do understand the league is the 32 owners. So the 31 other owners are like, damn, I guess we're rigging it for Kansas City again. You don't think McNair in Houston is like, hey, guys, I don't want to rig it for the Chiefs. And they're like, shut up, doesn't matter. So ridiculous.
I think he brings up an interesting point, right? And look, I've made this statement plenty of times here before. I'm not of the belief that there's a memo that gets sent out to every official across the NFL prior to the season from the desk of Roger Goodell. Hey, make sure the Chiefs win. We need Patrick Mahomes to host the Lombardi in February and all that kind of stuff. Because the league is so big. There are so many people involved with the NFL. You mentioned the owners who essentially are the league. To be able to craft something like that is next to impossible, in my opinion. Could calls go a certain way at critical times in the game that help the Chiefs out? Sure. But the Chiefs are still a really good team. The reason the Chiefs are successful is not because they get preferential treatment from the officials or whatever it may be. That being said, as an official in the league, if I'm a referee in an NFL game, particularly a playoff game, and the Chiefs are involved, I am in charge of officiating a game with the team that has been the standard, with the best quarterback in the league, with the best head coach in the league as of right now, one of the best head coaches of all time. And whether I admit it or not, I do think there's an internal, unintentional bias when those kind of things happen that you're going to give that team the benefit of the doubt because they are so good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Like, again, the Chiefs are where they are because they find ways to win. And that shouldn't be a surprise at this point because, number one, they're just so experienced. They're obviously the defending champs for 2 years in a row at this point, and great teams find ways to win, and they have a solid defense. And by the way, they have the best quarterback in football, though I don't think he's been as good as he has been in other years, particularly this season. But look, this team, the makeup of their team is winning games, and do they get some helpful calls every now and then? I do think so. And it's a problem, I think, when after the game, again, I don't like when people make excuses and stuff, but the Texans after the game making excuses for the fact of, oh, we lost this game partially because we knew the refs were going to give the Chiefs all of the calls and stuff. Yes, I understand that because there is that perception out there that, again, they do get the benefit of the doubt with these calls. But it's just something where it's like, I don't know. It's just not good when teams out there, like, it's not just the Texans. Other teams are like this too, where they just all know, like, all right, well, you're going to Arrowhead, you're going to play the Chiefs. Keep in mind, the refs are probably not going to be on your side this game.
Yeah, again, I think that's an excuse that any losing team can obviously tilt in their favor. However they see fit. The referees didn't give up a 70-yard kickoff return on the opening kickoff of the game. The refs didn't cause Kai Fairburn to miss 2 kicks and have one of them blocked and miss a PAT as well. Like, there are so many things that you can point to other than the officiating on why the Texans lost. And I do think that that's not the right way to approach it after the game by saying that's the only reason or one of the biggest factors on why you didn't win the game. And again, kind of going back to my point from a moment ago, I don't think any of the officials go into those kind of games saying, all right, I got to do everything I can to make sure that Kansas City wins. But again, when you're dealing with what has been the best team in the league and the most polarizing player in the league in Patrick Mahomes, whether you know it or not, you're probably inadvertently going to give them the benefit of the doubt when those 50-50 things kind of come up. Like, again, the Will Anderson thing, by the letter of the law, that is technically a penalty, but you see somebody hit Patrick Mahomes close to his neck. Okay, that's probably a flag. Because, again, that's the model of the league. That's the shiny object that everybody, sought out is going after when it comes to the NFL and the marketing and all that kind of stuff. And, if you see something that you think is close, they're probably going to end up getting called. And, again, I don't think they're trying to do that. I think it just happens.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I mean, look, I think it's just more so just a conspiracy than anything else that the Chiefs, are getting help from the NFL and stuff. I mean, look, we'll see what happens out on Sunday in Arrowhead when the Bills come to town. But
it is interesting to see over time how this evolves, right?
Yeah.
Because, again, it's the same thing with Patriots, same thing with 49ers back in the day with Joe Montana and all those kind of things. When teams start having a lot of success, you win that when the Chiefs won that first Super Bowl in the 2019 season. It's like, man, Patrick Mahomes, this great player, Andy Reid, finally got a Super Bowl and all these kind of things. And then, they went back the next year and lost. And then after that, they go back and win. And about then is when the perception starts to shift of, okay, they go from being just this really good team to being this team that the league is doing everything they can to help them win. And it's just, again, I'm not saying you're wrong for thinking that, but it's interesting to see how that perception shifts over time with these teams that are really, really good.
Mm-hmm. No, most definitely. Now it's yeah. Hey, look, it's easy to find all the reasons why, the wrong reasons why teams are winning games when they're this good. But again, that's what comes with being, the best in the NFL right now.
I want to expand on this a little bit more as we wrap up the hour, because I think the biggest problem is the amount of rules that we have in the NFL. And somebody on the live stream actually brings up a really good point that I want to hit coming up next. It is the Extra Point, Tyler Head and Jack Beltry, along with you on your Thursday here on The Game. Well, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Thursday on the game. I want to wrap up this conversation we're having in reference to what Patrick Mahomes said yesterday about officials not giving them preferential treatment, which, of course, what you think he was going to say. But Michael on the live stream, once again, which 2 for 2 on comments today so far, Michael brings up the point. He says, I think they are told to protect the quarterback, which I think is absolutely true. And that goes back to where football in general is right now. And look, I get it. Concussions, those kind of things become a serious issue with the sport, and rules have been changed because of that. But, man, some of the rules we have protecting quarterback necks now are insane to the point where I don't know how you get around quarterbacks without drawing fouls, to be honest with you, and that makes it so much easier to see these kind of things that, like what happened to Mahomes when it came to the Will Anderson hit, when it came to him sliding and those guys converging and basically hitting each other on the play. Because there are so many rules crafted around quarterbacks now, it's almost impossible to not draw a flag.
No, totally. It's like the slightest touch that doesn't go the right way. Like if you push a guy too hard to the ground or something, it's like, oh man, there's a penalty. Like you see some of the clips from like back in like the 2000s when there's a clip of I think like Reggie Wayne for the Colts back in the 2000s playing the Brady Patriots, and he gets absolutely crushed on a pass that goes up in the air that it falls incomplete. But it's stuff like that. It's like, okay, that was allowed back then where this guy basically got decapitated.
Yeah, those are the old hospital balls.
Yes. And with this, it's like, I mean, shoot, you shove Patrick Mahomes or, Joe Schmo to the ground a little too hard. Oh, 15-yard penalty. And it's like, it's kind of getting soft, to be honest, if you will. But it's like, I understand protecting guys and stuff, but like, come on, like the faintest touch ends up being something going against you.
Yeah. And again, look, quarterbacks are the face of teams, face of franchises, and they're the ones that, get all the attention around the league because, that's the most important position on the field at the end of the day. But, man, I think we've crossed over the line of too far when it comes to protecting them. The thing that drives me the craziest is the roughing the passer on sacks, right? Mm-hmm. Where they determined, and again, the thing that we need to stop putting so many judgment calls in officials' hands because they screw it up more often than not. Because, again, I think officiating is just terrible across the board as opposed to it being some kind of, league-wide memo that certain teams need to win. But the whole thing of, well, we deemed that he put too much of his body weight on the quarterback when he was sacking him. It's like, buddy, that's a 300-pound defensive lineman that is falling to the ground. Where's that way going to go?
Exactly.
Is he supposed to levitate above him? Is he supposed to suddenly change direction as he's falling to the ground? To not like it's those kind of things that remind me that the people that write these rules are often people that have never played football before, especially at that high of a level. Because in theory, you're like, oh, that's a good idea. We're going to protect quarterbacks by making sure the 300-pound lineman, doesn't put his shoulder into his gut as he's going to the ground. And yes, are there egregious examples of this? Sure. If you go out there like Nick Fairley and try and spear guys in the ground, okay, fine. That can be a flag. But simple sacks, just the most simple, basic sacks we've seen these past couple of years are drawing flags now. It's gotten ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's like, here's the thing. One bad play, one bad mistake does not mean that, like, every time, a sack happens, it's not going to be the same thing. Like, you're not going to get, like, for example, like you said, like someone, like, thoroughly, like after the play, shoving a guy back down to the ground, like we've seen before after getting a sack or something. Like that's not always going to happen, and that's where you should be throwing penalties and stuff. But it's the innocence of making a play, doing what you're taught to do, wrapping up a guy and bringing him to the ground, not doing it hard or anything, and yet it gets called for a flag. It's stuff like that that not only drives me nuts, but I know drives just about every fan nuts.
And it's gotten to the point where you've put defenders at a disadvantage, right? And let's go back to the play where the two Texans players hit each other trying to tackle Patrick Mahomes, because as he's running, you see he's like, He's getting ready to slide. You don't know when he's going to slide, but same thing with the Kenny Pickett thing that happened when he was at Pitt a couple years ago when the defender held up because he thought, okay, Kenny Pickett's about to slide, and if I touch him, that's going to draw me a penalty. Pickett fakes the slide and ends up getting a ton more yards out of it. He may have scored a touchdown on that drive. I don't remember specifically, but he very clearly used a loophole in the rule, which, hey, if the gray area is there, I get using it, but now you've put quarterbacks in such an area of power with some of these rules that if I'm a defender barreling down on Mahomes to make a tackle and he starts to slide, but I'm already in the midst of making the tackle, well, again, I can't stop on a dime. I can't change my direction. I'm going to hit him. So he's already going to get the gain of this run, and he's going to get 15 more yards because, again, I can't physically prevent myself from stopping tackling him if he slides at the last second.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I think there needs to be a more reevaluated approach to the rules and stuff. I mean, a complete arcing reevaluation to kind of make sure, like, are we doing the right thing here, making the calls that we do? But again, that's something that the NFL, the NFLPA, Roger Goodell, all those guys that make those decisions kind of need to come together and kind of figure out. I think it takes the NFLPA bringing up something like this because the players, like, you want to protect the players, but at the same time, you're also harming the players that are trying to play football the right way. I
think it hurts the game. It makes the game less enjoyable when those kind of things happen. And we'll see if anything gets changed in the offseason. Of course, we still have a couple more weeks of the NFL Conference Championships this weekend, and, of course, the Super Bowl coming up.
Don't forget the Pro Bowl.
2 weeks. I have forgotten the Pro Bowl, actually. That'll do it for hour number 1 of the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Club Hour presented by Grant's Cooling and Heating with myself and Wes Mitchell on your Thursday here on The Game. Tyler Head once again telling you about our friends over at Twin Peaks. I just mentioned a moment ago, still got a couple more weeks of pro football action taking place, including the big game coming up just a couple of weeks from Sunday. And there's no better place to take in that big game than with our friends over at Twin Peaks. Show up early and cash out quarterly. The first 100 fans to show up for that big game on Sunday get a free square for a chance to win a Twin Peaks gift card at the end of every quarter. Plus, every fan that shows up scores free fried pickles just for being there and watching the game. So, again, no better place to see the big game, no better place to take in all the great sports action going on than with our friends over at Twin Peaks with TVs as far as the eye can see, tons of delicious food, and, of course, those frosty 29-degree draft beers. All that and more at our friends at Twin Peaks over in the Vista.